So I want to introduce John Baeder. John started off his career in the advertising business. Grew up in Georgia. He worked for an ad agency there. They moved him to Madison Avenue, and
Well,
he was in it.
actually, it was Time Life Building.
Time Life Building. Okay, and
Well, in
he
the beginning, in 1964, I moved to New York.
okay, and he was a postcard collector back then, and collected postcards of roadside things, restaurants, gas stations, hotels, and
Yeah,
that his spurred him to was the catalyst of him painting diners. So before he starts, I just want to show you he has a couple of books out. This one here, I think, is the most recent one, even though it goes back about 10 years. The
it's a
Roadside
biography
Bacon.
book.
What you're looking at is an oil painting, even though it looks like a photograph. Um,
It's,
and then,
it's it's half of the oil painting. You'll be showing it
oh, okay.
more of it later.
This is another book, revised edition about diners. He has a book about his postcard collection, which is this one here. Also paints airplanes. So this is the cover of another book of airplanes paintings. These are paintings. And this is John back in his 20s in his apartment in New York. You can see that behind him is a painting he did on the wall.
That was when I just got started painting in 1972.
So before you start, I just want to play the video.
Okay, all right.
So there was a video, there was a song written about him, and they made a video with the song and images from the book. So I'm going to play. It's about 4 minutes. We'll play that, and then I'll give it back to John here.
Go on.
It started with an old postcard mailed home from a vacation, a beacon shining high above a place long forsaken. Let's go back to Georgia now on Highway 29. Son, you'll want to find a seat, 'cause this could take some time. Sunlight filters through the clouds, cast shadows in the chrome. Weary faces, coffee black, the traveler's second home. Morning papers left behind, eggs with crispy bacon. And Doc the waitress calls you hun on a road well taken. A road well taken stretches smooth and wide. When I take the caddy for her ride, out of town we head on down some rambling blue highway. No telling what we'll find out there today. Here's some photographs, shot in black and white. Once you open up your eyes, it's all about the light. Robert Frost, he got lost, and then he wrote a poem about choices that we make when we don't know where we're going. A road well taken stretches smooth and wide. When I take the caddy for her ride, out of town we head on down some rambling blue highway. No telling what we'll find out there today. I tangled with some taxis on Madison Avenue, bought some paint and brushes for something new to do. I hold it tightly in my hands, can't say how great it feels to capture old memories, paint dreams and make them
Wait a minute.
real.
Hey, can you start again? Can you start again?
A road well taken stretches smooth and wide. The caddy wants to go now for her ride. Hope we meet again somewhere down the line. Glad you came along, and thank you for your time.
I just wanted to mention that was Max's Grill was an old Tyranny diner in Harrison, New Jersey, and it's too bad I'd heard that it came down a few years ago. But that picture was taken by an Associated Press photographer for the introduction for an Associated Press article that went out for a promotion for the. Well, actually, it wasn't a promotion. It was an article about me for my first diners book. Yeah, so that picture was taken around August, September in 1978, and Diners was published in October, I believe. So we drove all over Jersey looking for the right picture. It was a whole day of shooting, and that was the one that was chosen by the publisher to use for the Associated Press article that went out all over the country, and some newspapers just use some use the photograph, and some because of space limitations just had the article, and you don't find that kind of press today, of course, but it got my name out there, and it sold a lot of books. So that was, I just thought I'd talk about that picture a little bit.
Want to talk about the book?
But if you want to know how I started collecting postcards, that's a whole nother story, which I think might be of some interest. But that picture of me in my studio in New York was it was a second floor walk up. It was a hovel. I called it my hovel. It was in Midtown Manhattan on 56th and 3rd. It had been a pied-à-terre when I was married and lived in Connecticut when I was in advertising. And then my wife split after I started painting, and I stayed there for 10 years, unfortunately, but I was sort of stuck there. That was taken like, it looks like this late summer of 72, and the painting behind me was I was painting black and white off of black and white postcards, and that's painting black and white postcards is how I got into painting realistically. Actually, I never really painted realistically before. I come from the abstract expressionism school when I was in school in the late 50s. Of course, I didn't know I was going to become a painter until I made the decision around the end of 1971 when I did 4 paintings, and most of them all 4 were of postcard images. One was a diner, one was a gas station. So getting back to collecting postcards, it started when I was in the advertising business, and I went to an antique show at Madison Square Garden around 1968, and I had run into a postcard dealer, my first postcard dealer I ever saw, and it was like an epiphany for me. It was an oddball, very eccentric son and his father, and they had more linens than I've ever seen in my life, and most of them were Main Streets. Uh, so I bought a whole slew of them, and they reminded me of some postcards that I had purchased in '65 with a buddy of mine, that we'd go to New Jersey every Saturday morning around 6 o'clock. We'd get up at 4 and drive to New Jersey to a flea market where all the antique dealers from New York would go and get their wares around 6 o'clock. Everybody had flashlights, and we didn't get home till like 10 in the morning. But I started purchasing a few postcards there, and they were like 5 cents. And if they were 10 cents, they were too expensive. And that's where it really started. But then when I went to the antique show and saw a real dealer with postcards, I was really flabbergasted. So they invited me to come down to their office where they had more postcards. And the office was way downtown in Wall Street. And I was working up on 6th Avenue and 58th Street. So I take the subway down at lunchtime. And actually, I had an extended lunch because I got real involved with all these linen postcards that were all new to me in a certain way. And it was a really oddball, old building in a sort of a dank, it was a dank office, but it was crowded but it was fun because I was just going through drawers and drawers and drawers of postcards, and that's how it all really got started for me. And I would come back up and in between my projects at the ad agency, I would sort of go over the postcards, and I looked at them and I said, and I sort of said to myself, these are like little paintings, and that's actually where it all started, as far as the idea. And the execution didn't happen until several years later. In late '71 and early '72, I had 4 postcard image paintings that I showed to Ivan Karp. It's all written in the book, of course, if anybody's read the book. But I showed only 4 paintings to Ivan Karp, who was a legendary art dealer in New York, who first saw Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein and got their careers started when he was at Leo Castelli Gallery, and he had just opened OK Harris in October '69, where and it was unheard of to have a show showing just 4 paintings. You usually show about 10, 12 paintings to an art dealer to establish your a show that's going to happen in 2 years down. But he said you can open the season in 1972. It was February 15th, 1972. And he said, you can open the season in September. So I quit my job at McCann Erickson, at that time, the largest agency in the world. And I quit my job April the 1st, and I started painting full time then. So that's sort of the history of how it all got started with me. And to round out the show, I wanted to give it some depth because most of the postcard imagery was sort of blown up. I was blowing up 3.5 inches to 3.5 feet, and it was all sort of flat color, like the Kirk type postcards. And I thought, well, I thought I'd include a couple real photo postcards, images, and which I did. And that's how, as I said before, that's how I got started painting realistically. So that's the whole history. And that picture right there was taken by a fan that came up one night and just started taking pictures of me. I didn't have no idea how that it was going to envelop into a picture that appeared in the book. And it's kind of hard to look at right now because it's in a way it's long ago, and in another way it's not long ago. which is a really strange feeling. So that was the first postcard I was enamored with, and it was the first image. It was the first image that I painted from that postcard. And I went back when I wrote Gas, Food, and Lodging. I went back to that location. And of course, I wanted to photograph it, and of course, there was nothing there compared to other postcard paintings that I did and other images. So there you go. That's 42 inches by 66 inches. The color is a little bit off. I think the borders, I think, is a little bit warmer. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if on those postcards, those type postcards, they use a typeface called Copperface Gothic, and it's real difficult to paint. But what you see is it looks like it's printed, but I lettered all that to copy the font. I don't know if you all notice some of the fonts that are used for descriptions on the front part of a lot of cards on the border, but oftentimes Kurt Tyke used the Copperplate Gothic. That was the name of the font. That makes if that's of any interest to you at all, but it was me, because typography is a big part of my life. See, it's not used here. It's a different font on this card. I have an Instagram account. I just posted this image on. I have an Instagram account that's at The America That Was. And what I'm doing is I'm posting a lot of my old cards on this account, sort of giving homage to the book, Gas, Food, and Lodging, Postcard RSC Through the Great American Roadside. So I'm taking cards from the collection and posting them about every 10 days or so. I don't know if anybody has an Instagram account, but it's the America That Was. So these postcards are, I think you got out of Gas, Food, and Lodging. I think I posted that one too. You see the typeface up on the border. That's Copperplate Gothic. I wonder what it was like there to eat there and to stop here. You can smell the grease. The book came out in hardback, and it had a different image, a different postcard on it. And this was used for the soft cover. It's really great to see the personalities of the chaps that worked at the gas station. And this was so much of the time when they used it was a commercial enterprise, and Tyke would the photographer that took the picture of the gas station took pictures of the gentleman that worked there probably sometime in the mid-20s, and they included them in those ovals, which were that sort of format was very popular back then. I've always loved this postcard because I have a tow truck fetish. That happened sort of when I was a kid. I was doing drawings of tow trucks, and now I collect toys and models of tow trucks, or I did collect them, mostly cast iron, but a lot of die-cast tow trucks. In fact, there's one on Instagram right now. I have another account called Toy and Model Vehicle Artistry, and I posted a tin toy truck made in Portugal. You know, oftentimes the activity in a gas station that they would park, they would park their vehicle that was some importance in the front. And here's a good example of that. and it's a great example of a Pierce Arrow tow truck. I happen to just love it. There was a whole, I think the teepees was there were several versions of this card. Yeah, that's in the book. It's a little bit light, but that's in the book on a black page, right? Yeah, it looks good in the book against black. Yeah, I went back to this location when I was doing my research on gas, food, and lodging. I was so curious to see what was there. I knew the fish wouldn't have been there, but um, it was just an empty lot. First, Howard Johnson's. I did a painting of Howard Johnson's in upstate New York. It was in a book called Junk Food, which was published in the early 80s. Now, I had borrowed that card from a good friend of mine in New York when I was doing the book, and then like with a few cards that I borrowed, and I ended up getting them later, going to shows. What I didn't say before was after this, when I was in the advertising business, I had moved to Connecticut, and I had learned of the New York Metro Club, and so I drove back down on a weekend, and I went. That was my first Metro experience, and I came back. I came back home full of joy. Have to tell you, I was full of joy. I had a little stack about so much, and I was so thrilled because I had never seen so many cards before that were of my interest, and that's what really got me started collecting cards. And I joined the Metro Club, but what I did was I placed ads in Antique Trader, and I think in those days this was 68 and 69, and it was in the wanted column, and I asked for diners, gas stations, motels, and tourist camps, and my address, and I was getting approvals every other day or so, and a couple packages in the mailbox. And it was overwhelming, and I would get notes from some of the dealers that, if they were dealers, I don't know whether they were dealers or not, but there were people that sent me just cards, and I would just pick out what I wanted and send the rest back. But a lot of the people said they wrote a note and said that was the stuff that they threw away. Diners, gas stations, tourist camps, and motels, which are probably so hot right now. Still, I don't know, but they were for a while, especially after gas, food, and lodging came out. I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Atlanta. It was in the 80s. I drove to Atlanta for a postcard show. I ran into a dealer there from Georgia, and he had a real Southern accent. And he had a separate box, and they were all linens. And he had a little card titled bubblegum cards. And I said, what do you, when I asked him, I said, what do you mean by bubblegum cards? And he said in his thick Georgia accent, he said, well, you know that guy that wrote the book? I said, what book? He said, well, you know that book about all those postcards with the gas stations and the diners and the roadside stuff. I said, oh yeah, I know that book real well. And then I sort of opened up and told him, and I think he was kind of flabbergasted. A few cards came back to me going back to shows, and then I had a couple people that still sent me approvals for a while, and then I stopped collecting about 15 years ago. I bought a few off of eBay, but not many. I was collecting matchbook covers for a while, uh, full length diners, and that was the last paintings that I had done in 2017 for an exhibition at a gallery. That was a new gallery that I was at, and I did about I think 12 full length postcard. I mean matchbook diners, and they were they were small, 24 by 36 inches. And at that time was when I started getting macular degeneration. I couldn't paint anymore. I think you can see them on my website, the match covers. That particular image, if you see the X, that was I wrote a note in the book in Gas, Food, and Lodging. The X has to do with the Cadillac. That's it's right there in front of you. It's a '49 Cadillac Sedanette, and I had the same car, the same color. That color was called El Paso beige. I could tell by the gradation of the in the photograph, uh, and I repainted it gray. But that time I had the car. I since had to sell it, but that's why I included that car. I was telling Michael the other day that I had got a huge collection of Main Street. Uh, I did a couple paintings of Main Street. I collected Main Streets, and what I really loved about some specific Main Streets were one, they had to have a cafe sign, and the other one, of more import, was that they had to have people crossing the street. Photographers, go from city to city, and they would quickly snap a picture and send it back to the publisher. And so that was that. I think that was part of it. They just went through town so rapidly. I was just looking through the dummy that was used to sell the book, to sell Gas, Food, and Lodging. I was just going through it earlier, and that was used as a full page. It was a different format. It was a smaller format. Here's an example of going back to that. This is in where Tennessee and Virginia come together. You could cross the street in your Virginia, and then you could cross the street again and you're in Tennessee. And
Says Fort Wayne,
so I
Indiana.
went back and photographed it. It's in the Tri-Cities, near the Tri-Cities, and that's what I did with Gas, Food, and Lodging. I went back and rephotographed. A lot of people are doing that now, rephotographing or trying to rephotograph past and present. A lot of people doing that on Instagram now, past and present. Some with postcards, some not. Oh, Okie Doke, that's why I have it there. It's called Okie Doke. As a whole, Jill and I collect postcards of oddball names for motels. I was just reading the other day, that goes that coffee cup since moved. I can't remember exactly where on in Bedford, Pennsylvania, Route 30. It was built in 1927. I can't remember where I saw it, the date. I forget where I was looking. And then I found another coffee cup. I was traveling north on A1A out of north of Fort Lauderdale about 25, 30 years ago. And I was just going north to Orlando, actually. And it was another coffee cup, very similar to this, except a little bit slicker. Was just just what sitting on the road with nothing else around it. As opposed to this, which was, has some meaning. And I'm sure there's some history. There may be a historical society around there, but there's got to be some history on the if it was built in 1927, the gas station. I don't know whether the gas station was there or not, but there's got to be some history on the juxtaposition with the gas station there and the coffee pot. And I don't know whether there was an enterprise in the coffee pot or not. It looks like there's a couple windows there. And that's also still that still exists. We were talking about it. It closed down and they restored it, and of course it doesn't have the clouds behind it. It's your typical Kurt Tyke retouch. I had the opportunity of visiting the archives up when they moved to Ottumwa, Illinois. The archivist had me put on white gloves, and I got to look at all the photographs that were shot for each image and the purchase order and the retouching, and it was really quite fascinating. I only got a day to spend there, and I didn't get enough to look at, but it was fulfilling to see how Tyke had retouched so much out of their imagery. When I was a little kid, I remember receiving and also seeing Tyke postcards of main streets, and you probably have seen some of these cars yourself, where the cars are retouched, and they look sort of cartoony. And I remember as a kid, I was always offended by that because it wasn't real looking. So I was back into I was unconsciously into realism then. But there are other there's tons of main streets, of course, and many are not retouched. But this was heavily retouched with the sky. It sits on a corner actually in it's high Art Deco, and there's tons of, I don't know how many variations of this postcards of Grand View Point. It's real photo, and there's linen and non-linen. When I went there doing the book, it had been closed for years, but it was open, and I walked inside, and it was just sad to see an empty shell, and that no one had taken care of it, and they eventually tore it down. But, so I was there in 80, let's see, 80, 81, probably the summer of it, or spring of 81, when I was doing research for the book, which was published in 82. And many of you probably have seen, I don't know what you collect, but maybe you've seen the variations of the Grand View. Of course, airplanes and cars are really popular, catch one's attention, pull off the road. To Art, I'm trying to think of his last name, Art Lacey. I talked to him. I don't know how I got to him. He flew the B-17 from LA to Portland, I think, Oregon. There's just many cars of this B-17 that was put up as a gas station. I have several really early real photos, and then there's lots of color. There's lots of color variations. And now it's either in shambles or it's gone. I saw some recent pictures of it. Some pictures of it when it was sort of just falling apart, and I don't know why it wasn't kept up as it should have been. But Art Lacey told me this great story about flying it and what trouble he had on the way. I think he founded it we flew from Los Angeles, but it probably was in some boneyard somewhere. They were all in Arizona after the war. Kingman, Arizona was one B-17 boneyard. I think that's also moved too. I think it still exists from its original location. I've seen some pictures somewhere that I don't think it's a hot dog stand, but it's I don't know. It's still a commercial enterprise, but it was saved. And I'm sure there's some history on it being saved by some preservation society somewhere. That was an advanced trainer used during World War II, sitting on top of the station. Jackrabbit was, I'm sure, retouched in. That's really heavily retouched. I could just tell by the trees. That was the fun part of going through all of Kurt Tyke. Like this, I always loved it when they retouched little cars in. That diner went through several transformations. When I moved to Nashville, I drove down to Swanee, going to Atlanta, and it's on the top of the mountain, and it still existed, except it didn't look like a diner. But there's so many Kurt Tyke cars that have funny little retouched cars in them. They just sort of place what's amusing is that they're placed so arbitrarily. There's many variations, by the way, of this diner also. I guess this falls in the category of ersatz architecture. Here's a good example of a card that I used for the book that I got from a collector friend, and then I found it later. That's a good example of retouching. I love the typography and his figure. I'm sure that sign was heavily retouched. I like to have seen the original. Could have been neon, could not have been. I love the mystery of these little mysteries that exist in the postcard imagery. The diner on the lower right there were several variations of that diner. I think it's still, I haven't been to Jersey for a long time since I moved to Nashville in 1980. So I haven't been to Jersey in a long time to investigate whether that diner is still there or not. I think it is in a newfangled form, of course, but there were some, it went through some transformations and there were postcards of it. There's another example of a painting off of a postcard. The painting right now is just with an art dealer of mine in LA. He's quite enamored with it. It was one of my earlier paintings. You can't really see it in the because it's so small, but there's a chap getting gas, and there's a figure filling up the tank, but you can't see it. That painting was done in, I think, 73. It's also quite large, 42 by 66 inches off of the postcard. There again, you can't see it, but there's some figures. There's like two little boys talking to an elderly man like me, probably younger, on the corner. Is standing there chatting. Kind of makes the whole image. There's the image that was used that I just showed you for the invitation for my first exhibit, September the 12th, 1972. So I took the graphics that you see on the right and left side and middle from one postcard, and I took images from three chrome cards and one linen. And the linen was in the lower left, and the other three were from chrome cards. So I inserted them I can't remember what the well, the cozy camp was. It had pictures of the motel, but I just wanted to make it a little bit more dramatic using this imagery. I think it was it was one of the first paintings it sold for good reason. I think it went to AT&T or something, some big corporation. That gas station still exists. The sign doesn't. It's in St. Louis, right off the thruway, coming into the city on Route 59, I believe. I've gotten gas there. I have friends in St. Louis. I was visiting a lot. Sometimes stay at the motel, which was up behind it, and I'd get gas there to come back, drive around. But it was right in the sort of in. Of course, everything's changed there, but the station still exists. I was collecting Stuckey's cards for a while, both linen and real photo. The woman who is president of Stuckey's somehow knew who I am, and she was in town and wanted to meet me. She was visiting the writer, actually, of that song, one of the writers of the song, his bookstore several years ago. And she said that she wanted to meet me and have, but she wanted to meet me and get together, have lunch and so forth. And I told her, when she comes back, I'd love to meet her. But she was the president of Stuckey's. I don't know how many people have been to Stuckey's for their famous pecan roll. There used to be one going down to Atlanta that I would sort of visit. I don't know whether it's still there or not. I haven't been to Atlanta since 2016. I don't know how many people have been to Stuckey's. So this was in an old trailer, which is rare to find an old trailer that's an eatery. If you can see the signage of the banana split, that was a hand-painted sign on plywood. You want to talk about the truck?
Yeah, the truck. People in Rochester may look at that truck in the back there and recognize the DeCarlos truck rental logo in the back of that truck. It's sort of blocked off by the trailer, but that's the local company here, DeCarlos Truck Rental. I recognize the logo.
Goomba, that was the name of the operator of the trailer. It's called Goombas. Just sort of slang, Italian slang. I painted the hamburger in there. Sometimes I had a little sign.
Does Goomba mean uncle?
I don't know. I thought it was friend. That was up in the Catskills. I was driving back from my art dealers who had always had a house up in Charlottesville, which is about 4 hours from the city. I just somehow just wanted to get off the road and get onto a blue line highway, and maybe some angel told me that just to get off the road, and I was driving by there, and all of a sudden I spotted it. I think that by itself, without the truck and the bus, it wouldn't be such a strong painting. Along with the pennants and the pole, you'll notice as far as the composition, the pennants and the line of the pennants and the pole across each other, and the pennants line and the line on the highway sort of are match, and then there's a line that runs across the trailer. So as far as compositional elements. That's what makes the painting stronger. This is the Fog City Diner. It was a commission by the owners. I knew them personally at the time. In 1984, it was the hottest restaurant in San Francisco. They had been looking through my book, Diners, and decided to open up the Fog City Diner, which is they made it look kind of slick. It's a little bit more sharper as far as the painting is, as far as the image is concerned, but because you can't see the chrome that well. It's full of chrome and your typical vintage faux checkerboard graphic, and I tried to get it where I could at least show some people in it, and I did a watercolor of the front, which isn't that exciting, but the interior was quite beautiful. It was done by Paul Coletto, who did interiors for restaurants. He had his own Italian restaurant in a hotel in San Francisco, which was quite good. He also designed a faux diner in Atlanta. But now someone bought the Fog City about 3 years ago and tore out the beautiful wooden interior, and it became just another restaurant. It was pretty pathetic. I saw some pictures of when they tore it out. It was a sad day just to see that, but that's what happens all over. But this was the hottest. It's right across the street from Embarcadero, if you know San Francisco. It was a cold November day, and Almax was also another Alan Mack. There was an earlier version of Almax in Massachusetts. Fall River, Massachusetts. They had great rice pudding. That was a very cold, dank day. I did one painting of it, and it sold, and then there was a collector that wanted another painting of it because he had a business in Fall River, and he lived in nearby Newport, and also Palm Beach, West Palm Beach. So he wanted an exact duplication of the diner. I told him I would put signs in the window of dates of his kid's birthday and personal stuff, and he got a big kick out of that. And someone's favorite food, I put that in the window, but the painting is a little bit darker, so the clouds are darker. He requested more light coming from the clouds. He didn't like the dark clouds, but I didn't change it at all. I kept the clouds dark, and I had to go down to West Palm for a hanging. He had to hang it in a certain spot above his bar in his home in West Palm. Fall River was a very commercial city that provided a lot of clothing, and I asked him what he did. In fact, I said to him when we first met, "Are you in the clothing business?" And he said that he manufactured uniforms for the Israeli army. I don't know whatever happened to him or the painting. You never know. This is on Route 9 and also in Jersey. I can't think of the name of the city right now. I did a side view of it later on. And this is 1973 or four, I think, 3 or 4. And I did a frontal of it in 2012 or 13. That's from the railroad. That was taken from railroad trestle. I did a watercolor of it, and I did a sitting on the ground, and then it's called the Miss Wooster, mostly because it's manufactured by the Worcester Dining Car Company, which was exactly across the street. To the right side was across the street is a red brick building, and that's where the Worcester dining cars were built from the early 20s until the 40s. This was a hot dog truck, and I can't remember. I think around Newark, New Jersey, Newark or Patterson, somewhere around there. Patterson's was a Silk City Diner company. This is in St. Paul, Minnesota. Currently, there's a real ugly building behind it, which obscures all the other architecture, which beautifully contrasts the Mickey's Dining Car. This is the June 6 o'clock light. Gentleman that had this bus took out the seats and made little booths. He was there when I was in Paulding, New York, where I was driving upstate, and that's how I discovered it. And this was in Hudson, New York. I think we discussed that, this location. That was sold to a gentleman in Paris who owned the Paris version of PBS here. I met him. He'd come to New York for my exhibition. It was right at the beginning. It was around 1991, and it had a hard time coming into customs because of the war. It came in at the last minute, right before the exhibition opened, actually. And I met him at the gallery at OK Harris, and he was a lovely chap. And he had evidently a huge collection of Americana and paintings that he sold at auction. It was a huge catalog, about 10 years ago. And of course, here again, I have no idea where it was. Probably somewhere in Europe. Again, another fun painting to paint. If it's not fun, then forget about it. And here again, people always say you don't paint any figures. Well, I don't, but if they're there, I'll put them in. And these are a couple chaps talking with their bicycle, along with the bicycle, and I can't remember. Here again, it's New Jersey. This is also New Jersey on a very cold November afternoon after it snowed. I would just start driving, and there's the painting. That's the cover of the book. I was visiting a friend in Denver. This is Denver, Colorado. They were getting ready to tear this down. I have a newspaper article from the woman that owned it about them tearing it down, and they showed the painting, and they showed in the article they showed the painting, and then they showed the photograph of the diner. And well, it's not really a diner; it's homemade diner, but it was used as the cover of the book because it sort of summed up everything as far as my whole road well taken. And I was driving the yellow marathon taxi all over Colorado for about a week. He let me have his. He collected a few cars where I was staying, and I knew him from New York days. First got to the location, the Pontiac had not parked there yet, and when it pulled in, it sort of made everything for me as far as a shape and a color. That's one of my favorite colors, which I call landlord green, institutional green. There's variations of it, but it's sort of a favorite color of mine. And then as I was standing there photographing the truck in the middle right, you can't read it probably right now, but it says the Denver. So he pulled in, and that gave it a sense of location. I guess the Denver was probably maybe a department store or something of some consequence. So the the back of the cover of the book is me holding the painting, which is quite large. It was, I think, about 60 by 72 inches, and I painted it in a laundry room of a buddy of mine in Marin, across the bridge from San Francisco, Mill Valley, California, and it was. I painted it in this back laundry room for a month while he went away with his wife and kids to go across America, and I was house sat. I did the painting then, and I can't remember how I got that stretcher bar that large made, much less get it into his house and into the laundry room. That's how I did. That's when I did the painting, which was in August of '75. That's in Newington, Connecticut. I can't remember the route number. It's a road off the interstate. At night, it's quite exciting. It's probably the best diner sign around. I did a night version of it later on, and that's in Wayne, New Jersey. I had a show of New Jersey diners at the Wayne University in Wayne, New Jersey, which was about a 5 to 10 minute drive from Pappy. I don't know who Pappy was, but I'm sure he was a pretty delightful gent. Naming it Pappy. I did eat there a couple of times, and this is in Coney Island. I can't remember whether I inserted any signs or not. I don't think so. That's Curly's Diner in Stamford, Connecticut. It's still there. Stamford went through a giant urban renewal, and they wanted to tear it down, but they managed to keep it. And that's in Glassboro, New Jersey. I'm big on primary colors, trying to get them into a painting some way, one way or the other. The blue Chevette sitting next to the yellow Cadillac had not been there. There was some ugly car that was sitting there, and then as I was standing there taking pictures, a fellow came out and got into his car and left, which made me really happy because I'm a Cadillac nut, and I wanted to get the Cadillac in there in full form. But then the blue Chevette drove in and parked. So then it even made me happier because I got the little red Toyota pickup and the blue Chevette and the yellow Cadillac. So got my little primary colors in there, sort of glaring. And of course, the striped awnings sort of add a little bit more charm. That was Las Vegas in 1975. That painting is now, was or now still is in an enormous exhibition of photorealism from 1968 to 80 in Los Angeles at the Museum of Contemporary Art. It's a huge catalog, and it looks like it was like a 2-year curatorial program that they had to put together because the catalog is so huge. And this painting they got from the Yale Museum of Art, where it's in a big collection. And I had done a series of Las Vegas paintings. You showed one earlier, a watercolor. Oh no, that was in the watercolor was in the. I did a whole series of this was 1975, but I did a whole series of Las Vegas paintings. That's Providence, Rhode Island. That diner, the modern diner, moved to Pawtucket about 35 years ago. It's called a Sterling Streamliner. It's made in Merrimack, Connecticut, and the manufacturers goes back to around 1940. But prior to that, the manufacturers were were making custom chassis on classic cars, mostly Lincoln, and but some Cadillac and Packard. That was in Long Island City, New York, which was at the time very industrial. It's all gentrified now, but in Long Island City, New York, right across the river from Manhattan, one subway stop, there was a plethora of diners in that area because it was all commercial. So they catered to mostly the lunch crowd. I don't think any of the diners were open in the evenings, but there was a whole lot of them that I painted there. I did another version of this on the sideways where you see the windows are more the reflections in the windows. This was called a Coleman Jr. It was a Coleman Manufacturing Company, and they're also in New Jersey. I can't remember the name of the city. It was a smaller version of their. This goes back to about 1947, maybe earlier. I think about 47. So I painted two John's diners. I think this was in the subway. I think this is in Queens. It's Queens, New York. I did a whole series of taco trucks out in LA, maybe about 12 paintings, 12 watercolors, one oil. This truck was off of Lancashire Avenue in North Hollywood. That postcard is everybody recognizes, I'm sure, and I think everybody knows that this also is also reproduced. There's lots of repros of it. I think in the early days, well, like later. I mean, I don't mean early days. I'm talking about somehow they appeared and they were like very expensive, like $50. And then they were repros. Hal, you probably know more about that than me. Finding a real trolley or urban, that's an urban, that's an interurban car is a rarity. I have a lot of photo postcards of interurbans transformed into postcards of interurbans transformed into diners. In fact, there's one on that I posted just recently on the America That Was on Instagram. This was a black chap that had a barbecue bus in Newark, New Jersey. It was a Sunday, and there was no traffic and no cars parked. And if you notice, the building upstairs, you probably can't see it, but it's the headquarters of the NAACP. So my theory was that he had some dealings up there, or maybe he headed up the NAACP in that part of Newark or Jersey, or I don't know, but I like to theorize that that's why it was parked there. I was just driving by, there it was. So I actually the painting went to my art dealer. He bought it. He liked it so much. Juxtaposition of yellow and blue wasn't apparent then, but now when we look at yellow and blue juxtaposed to each other, it's of some significance. And I don't know whether you've noticed there's a lot of TV studios, yellow and blue now. Anyway, there's a Royal Diner that I painted in October. Is your very fall tree. That's the one that I painted in either 2012 or 13. That went to a collector in England. He said he thought it was one of my best paintings. Well, it's not, but I don't know what's the best anyway, but he thought so. But it's a pretty early Worcester dining car. God, I can't remember the name of the town, and it's still there in Massachusetts. And that was on Bloomfield Avenue, probably in Bloomfield, New Jersey, the old Silk City, closed. It has some graffiti. I added a couple little personal graffitis at the time. I do that occasionally. Another old Worcester dining car in Massachusetts. That was also the last of my diner series. I painted in 2012 and 13. That was the last time. That was my last exhibition at OK Harris in 2013. They closed in 2014, and that became Rosie's. When Rosie they shot, if anybody remembers the Rosie Bounty paper towel commercials, they shot Rosie in that specific Paramount dining car in Little Falls, New Jersey. They changed the name to Rosie's. I think it was called the I can't remember the name of it right now. Yeah, it had another name, but the diner sign is pretty terrific. I think we showed that Rosie's in the video. That it was in the video. That's an early black and white that when I was from 73 or so.
Isn't that the one where you talked to the photographer and to get permission to paint it, and then it turned out it was a different photographer or different?
No, this happened. No, that was another painting,
Oh,
but this is Russell Lee. I called him up and asked him if I could. I called him up at he headed up the photo department at University of Texas in Austin. I called him up, just cold. I don't know. I don't know how I got hold of him, but I did, and he couldn't have been more friendly. And I asked him. I said, "I've got a picture of yours from that you shot for WPA back in the late '30s," and I said, "I want to do a painting of it. I really love the imagery." He says, "I'm honored," and I said, "No, I'm honored. I'm happy to talk to you." Russell Lee was one of my favorite photographers of that WPA FSA period. One that I thought was his was in the book also. It's Two Parked Cars Against a Cafe. And that was Marion Post Wolcott, and I thought it was Russell Lee.
and then this is the last one, the airplane.
Yeah, I did about 45 paintings of aircraft. This goes back to whole childhood. Not a child. Well, yeah, a child to teenage. Before I started going to parties and dating a lot, I collected photographs of World War II and post World War II aircraft, and I was always enamored by them, and I wanted to paint them. So
Yeah, that's the
I
last
love sepia, and black and white, and so all the paintings are sepia or black and white, but they're all different variations. But they're all monochromatic. They're on my website.
Well, thank you very much. Does anybody have, I know we went kind of later than usual. If anybody has any questions, though, feel free to ask.
Just a short question. After thanking you so much for walking us through diners, the East Coast common sight, but an adorable sight. But were any of your paintings produced as postcards?
Oh yeah, many.
Oh, I've missed them.
Many.
I collect your books, but I haven't started collecting your postcards yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't know I don't think they get out into the postcard world. A lot of them were published by the gallery. I never published any myself personally, but most of them were published, or all of them were published by the gallery. Yeah, and one was published by Abrams when the book came out. Large, oversized postcard. Yeah,
Okay.
there were a lot. I mean, in fact, I'm kind of overwhelmed myself when I run across them here in my. They're not in my collection. They're in another little area, scattered. And then when I find them, I find some that I don't even know that were even printed. So I guess I get little surprises myself personally. It's an odd feeling, but it's fulfilling.
I'll let you know when I find a new one, okay?
Yeah, okay, very good. You know, Wichita is the home of the Valentine dining car company.
Exactly. Right.
I've done a lot of paintings of Valentine diners. In fact, when I was at school at Auburn, we hung out at a diner. But of course, at the time, I didn't know it was a Valentine, but it was a quintessential Valentine diner with 10 stools and 2 booths on either side. And then when I went back, when I started writing diners, when I went back to Auburn just to do some research, to meet Roy, who tried to find Roy actually, who owned the diner. I managed to find him, and he lived in Columbus, Georgia. And I called him. Somehow I got his number. I don't know how, and he wasn't very friendly. He wasn't friendly. He wasn't very friendly when he owned the diner either. But he had a mystery meat sandwich, which was so great. It was like a fried pork sandwich on a bun with just lettuce and tomato. And somehow, you know, when you're a kid in school and you've been drinking, it's nothing better. Anyway, the diner had transformed into a real estate office. And then I went back down there in 2006, and of course that whole part of that Main Street there in Auburn, where the diner was, it had all. I think it was a building that was a print shop or something or other. It was a second-story building, so everything was gone. But you know, it's odd how the Valentines get to various parts of America, because they're mostly situated in the Southwest, right? And there was the one in Angola, Indiana that I painted. So if one got to Angola, Indiana, which was the northeast tip, and Auburn, Alabama, it's in the southeast tip of Alabama. Somehow, you know, the salesperson, whoever sold them, try to sell them further out in other areas of the country.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Those people here in Rochester, I forgot. I should have put it in there, but John did a watercolor of the Highland Park Diner.
And
There's
a painting.
there's a print of it framed inside the diner if you go in there.
And
Wow.
a painting. I did a watercolor first, and then a painting.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And then Danbury Mint made an incredible model of both Mickey's dining car and the Highland Park. And in the Highland Park Diner, they actually have watercolor inside the model. It's teensy weensy teensy. You can hardly see it, but it's there.
Interesting.
Yeah, very. Yeah, I didn't even know about it. I had gotten the model, and then Larry Coltrera, we were having a chat one day. He said, "Did you know that the watercolor is in the model?" I said no. I had the model for a few years. I didn't even know that it was in there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is a great wagon behind you. I don't know if you can see it, but
Well, what it is,
10 cents.
yeah, what's usually behind me is a couple other things, or my bookcase. And I didn't know how to change it. I know there's changing it down there on the bottom. I tell you what it is. I had a 1930. I've got Fortune magazines from 1930 to 38, all bound.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's a whole story on how I got them when I was living in Connecticut. Anyway, but then I have some loose ones, and I just happened to take one day and and I put it on a table, and I just happened to turn it, and that picture appeared.
Oh.
It's a It's a 1938 picture. I mean, it's a picture from a 1938 Fortune magazine.
Mm.
So I took a quick snap of it with my camera. I mean, you know, with the phone camera, and I ended up using it as a background.
Well, it's terrific, just fabulous.
During the pandemic, I have a lunch group every Friday, and during the pandemic, we would meet with a Zoom every Friday
Ah,
around noon, and all of us had different backgrounds.
yeah.
So we'd have fun changing the backgrounds. And that was,
Good for you.
yeah, that was one of them. But I've got several others, but I usually have just like a bookcase behind me. So
Sure, sure.
anyway, so I was waiting for someone to make that observation. I figured you might. I figured you might.
Right. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for
Any
this
other questions? Anybody?
Happy to see
presentation.
you.
Yes,
Happy to
thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you, John.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very,
John.
very
It was
much.
Great.